Seeking new beginnings. The first European settlers. The story of the United States begins long before 1776. Early European settlers arrived on the shores of North America seeking new opportunities and a fresh start. Driven by a mix of economic ambition, religious freedom, and a thirst for adventure, these pioneers faced a challenging new world. Life was harsh, with unfamiliar landscapes, unpredictable weather, and often hostile indigenous populations. Despite the hardships, these early colonists persevered, establishing settlements and laying the foundation for a new nation. The first permanent English settlement, Jamestown, was established in Virginia in 1607. Driven by the promise of gold and riches, these early colonists faced disease, starvation, and conflict with Native American tribes. Further north, the Pilgrims, seeking religious freedom, landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. Their story of survival and cooperation with the Wampanoag tribe became central to the American narrative. These early settlements, each with their own unique challenges and triumphs, represent the first chapters in the story of the United States. 13 colonies emerge, seeds of a nation sown. Over the next century and a half, 13 distinct colonies took root along the Atlantic coast. Each colony developed its own unique character and identity, shaped by geography, economics, and the origins of its settlers. New England, with its rocky soil and cold winters, became a center for fishing, shipbuilding, and trade. The middle colonies, with their fertile land and moderate climate, developed thriving agricultural communities. The southern colonies, blessed with warm weather and long growing seasons, built their economies on cash crops like tobacco, rice, and indigo, relying heavily on enslaved African labor. Despite their differences, the colonies were bound by a common language, English common law, and a growing sense of independence from their mother country. They developed their own systems of government, often with elected assemblies that gave colonists a voice in local affairs. Life in the colonies was far from perfect, marked by social hierarchy, religious intolerance, and the brutality of slavery. However, the seeds of self-governance and individual liberty were being sown, setting the stage for the momentous events to come. A delicate, balanced colonial life under British rule. For much of their early history, the American colonies existed in a state of relative autonomy from Great Britain. The vast distance across the Atlantic Ocean fostered a sense of independence. The British government, preoccupied with European affairs, largely left the colonies to govern themselves. This period of salutary neglect allowed colonial institutions to mature and a distinctly American identity to emerge. However, the relationship between Great Britain and the colonies was never entirely harmonious. The British government viewed the colonies as a source of raw materials and a market for their manufactured goods. The colonists, on the other hand, increasingly resented economic restrictions imposed by the mother country. As the 18th century progressed, a series of events, including the French and Indian War, would shift the balance of power and sow the seeds of discontent that would ultimately lead to revolution. Taxation without representation, the road to revolution. The French and Indian War, fought between Great Britain and France from 1754 to 1763, proved to be a turning point in the relationship between Great Britain and its American colonies. The war, which ended in British victory, came at a high cost. The British government, burdened by war debt, looked to the colonies to help replenish its coffers. This led to a series of taxes levied upon the colonists, including the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, and the Tea Act. These taxes, imposed without the consent of the colonists, sparked outrage and resistance. The cry of "no taxation without representation" rang out from the streets of Boston to the taverns of Charleston. The colonists argued that they should not be subjected to taxes imposed by a parliament in which they had no representation. The British government, however, viewed the colonies as subordinate and obligated to contribute to the empire's financial well-being. This fundamental disagreement over taxation and representation would prove to be the breaking point, pushing the colonies and Great Britain on an inevitable collision course towards war.